Well, folks, welcome back to another edition of Rimshots with Sean, brought to you by Barstools and Bandtalk. I apologize, I'm in a different locale. I've been having a little bit of a connection issue. That being said, we have a couple of brand new friends here. Band called Valerian Sun. We have John and James. I'm going to let you guys tell our viewers where you're from. But
Sure.
John, start with you. You're a drummer, bud.
Yeah.
Love drummers.
Awesome.
Tell us about this new single that's out.
Yeah. So the new single that's out, it's actually our second ever release. So we're calling it our sophomore release. It's called The Burnout. It released last Tuesday. So it's been out almost a week, and we're really excited, because we are a newer band and, just starting to get established and, build a fan base and all of that fun stuff.
It's tough. And I mean,
Yeah.
I've been in the business for a number of years. I have a couple of bands that I play in, but I'm also working with an artist and trying to break that. You guys, you're obviously going to do the traditional route. You're doing the Spotify, the streaming, but you're releasing this, I guess, in a little bit more, of a different way too. Tell us how the release has been going.
Yeah, the release has been going pretty good. It's been going well, definitely better than the first one. And just, the low hanging fruit, so to speak, of, last time we released, we really didn't do any sort of campaign. So now we have a publicist, Jamie, who's really helping facilitate and teach us, good habits and things like that. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty traditional campaign though. I mean, we're going, obviously we're distributing through Spotify and all of the different platforms, but with the music video, it's, as everybody would expect, you're going to get a lot more retention when you release a moving visual versus just slapping an album cover on something and dropping it into a bucket filled with, tens of thousands of songs.
Sure. And I mean, I've had the absolute pleasure to work with Jamie for a while. She's a pro.
Nice.
I know you got good hands. Just before I pop over to James, I mean, I'll tell you something that she did.
Yeah.
She did about a 20-minute to 30-minute sit down session with my son, who happens to be a rap/hip hop producer, and gave him some advice, and he's been putting that to good use. So good hands with Jamie. James.
Absolutely.
Hi.
Love the band name. Love the band name. What's the origins of that? Jamie sends me the info, and I'm going like, it's getting so hard to pick a cool name for a band these days, right? And
it is. There's only so many words in the English language that you can smush together, I guess. And that's, well, I mean, like that was actually kind of like the primordial soup of our band names, is this endless text string of me and Trey and Jon-Mikel literally just mashing words against each other, right, seeing what works. But then we kind of fell into this place where we started kind of like determining what the trajectory of the band's goal or mission statement ultimately would be. And I think we fell around the idea of mental health awareness first. This band is deeply invested in the universal problem of mental health, and Valerian Root is known to soothe anxieties. It's known to help you fall asleep at night when you have trouble. Generally, be a soothing balm, and we strive to be the most cacophonous soothing balm on the market.
That's right.
Hey, I like that. And, with the last couple of years, mental health has obviously been something that has been top of mind with and for a lot of people. I mean, everybody kind of handled the last 2 years their own way. How did you guys, I guess, get through that? I mean, there's a little bit of a theme with a lot of people that I've been talking to, that they had just started to either record or get ready to tour. Everything hits, everything's shut down. They can't do a darn thing but depend on
exactly.
That kind of what happened with you guys?
Yeah.
So Jon-Mikel, you go first.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. And through these interviews we were doing last week, you know, it's almost meditating. So I was thinking last week, like this band wouldn't exist if it wasn't the pandemic. If you line up all of the different variables, like through the pandemic, I know we all did similar things. I know James is always working on music, but I actually was, you know, hence the title of, you know, the single that we have out right now. I was burnt out from just traditional jobs. I've bounced back and forth from, you know, sales and business, and music is pretty much, it's what I do, is I bounce back and forth. So through the pandemic, I had like a quarter life crisis, as my girlfriend would call it. And I just spent a lot of my savings on putting a home studio together. And I don't even know why I did that. So I do now, but you know, it in retrospect, it didn't really make much sense because, you know, I wasn't any sort of producer or engineer at the time. But you know, it's interesting just how things work, because this project has really been as organic as it possibly could have been, you know?
So I was going to say, I bet you're a producer now. I mean, you probably were forced to figure out what you spent money on. And
yeah, it was goofy because I bought Logic, I bought all this stuff, and I'm like, all right, cool. You know, I'm sitting in the new chair, you have all the cool stuff, and it's like, oh shit, man, this stuff's not like easy. You understand why, you know, people get the title engineer. And yeah, I mean, I can move around and do some, you know, intermediate, I would say, level production at this point. But thankfully too, you know, James is actually really, really talented with engineering and stuff like that. So, but oddly, you know, we've never done any pre-production. We go into the studio dry is kind of part of our theme as well, with nothing written. And we look at music like it's a language, and we're very intentional about that. And so we just went in and we wanted to see how fluent we really were. You know, we've been playing all of our lives, and you know, thankfully it wasn't a disaster. And I think we have some good stuff to show for it.
So James, just to build on that a little bit, I know I went in the studio a few months back, ended up getting a couple of singles done for people. But it was very similar to what Jon-Mikel was talking about. I didn't know the song going in. They wouldn't let me prepare. It was literally put your ID together. Oh, by the way, the clock's running, so don't screw up. Talk a little bit about your own, I guess, your resources. You know, you're not getting, you know, dinged for $90 an hour or whatever the going rate is in your part of town, but maybe talk about how that, you know, added to the creative process.
Well, you have two approaches these days, I guess. Approach number one is you do what Jon-Mikel did.
Right.
You know, you buy yourself some gear and start figuring out a DAW and start learning the basics of production and engineering. And, you know, if then you figure you want a drum kit on your new record, so then you have to learn how to mic a kit, and then you have to buy mics and pre's, and, you know, fill out your studio and hone your talents over the years. It's going to take you to acquire the skill set to produce and engineer your own stuff, which is great if that's what you want to do. That's what I've been doing for the past 10 years. And even to, you know, approach the kind of rudimentary levels that I'm at now takes a tremendous effort and a lot of reaching that precipice where you like feel like you know what you're doing, and then you're opened up to an entire new mountain to climb, which can be frustrating and painful, as I'm sure you know as a producer.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've always found in the studio is you know, and any drummer will know if they've done a lot of studio time, you know, if you're not prepared, like if you don't know how to play to a click track and you get an engineer that wants a click track, and you can't do it, and it's like, hey, what, we're going to get somebody that can if you don't figure it out in a hurry.
Yeah.
To actually hearing yourself being played back and thinking, man, I thought that was really smoking what I did, and it really wasn't. Little things like that get in your head. It's a very psychological process, I guess, when you're recording.
Yep.
It is. And that's why it's often nicer to go with option number 2, which is to defer that entire universe of thinking to people like Carson and Grant at Atrium Audio. And you just let everyone do what they're best at. If it's, if it's the right time to do it.
It's interesting that you say that, because I get to know a gentleman by the name of Anthony Esposito, who used to work with Lynch Mob and Red Dragon Cartel with Jake E. Lee.
Love Lynch Mob.
Yeah, and he's a producer, and Anthony will not master anything that he records. And he basically his thought is that he's too close to it at that point when it gets to that point, and he can't take constructive feedback on what it might need for that last little bit of sparkle. James, what would you think about that?
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I have really, in many areas of my life, I've been in that exact situation where you hyper focus on something and you're like 48 hours into this track. You should have been done 16 hours ago with it.
Right.
That you should have stopped 16 hours ago. And now you're just stuck in a mix hole where your ears are tired. You've been, barely sleeping, eating, and you're just too close to it. You're too close to it. You've heard it too much. Your ears you get worn out on it. So I totally sympathize with your friend. I've been there 100%.
You get that thing that they call music head, where something that actually does sound halfway decent sounds horrible, and it's just your mind playing tricks with you.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah. Perception is half the battle.
Well, and so, John, it's kind of like, again, drummer to drummer. I mean, we had Todd Zuckerman on the show, and I asked him,
Sticks.
and he said actually very little, because he's to the point now where the muscle memory is good, and if he gets something going and it's not going well and he digs in, he actually gets worse than better.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel it's the same way in the studio? I mean, look, you guys worked really hard. You said that the first single maybe didn't go the way that you like. You're pushing this next single, but is that how you guys felt when you're in the studio? You really want to get it done, but maybe you're getting a little frustrated with progress?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you go, and this too, anytime you go into the studio, there's frustrations. And especially, we built a lot of our own stresses going into it. And we really were, again, James, I'm going to say intentional. We were intentional about it, and it was stressful. I know even Grant said the first day, he was like, man, I'm going to be honest, I'm excited, but I didn't sleep much last night.
Right.
So there was part of me that felt kind of bad about that. But on the other hand, it's, why do we play for so many years and then you have to do all this preparation and everything is so, packaged before you even create it? There was money involved. It wasn't cheap, but it was like, what, I think we're all pretty seasoned, and if we're not, then we're about to figure it out.
That's right.
So that was the part that stressed us out, I think, for sure. But I mean, I know you remember this, James, first song actually went like that. We couldn't believe it. The second song that we ever did in the studio out of the 5 that we have, mostly unreleased, but there was a point where I know I didn't talk for probably about an hour. I was really frustrated because the direction of where the song was going. And I think everybody felt that way, but there's a certain level of positivity that you have to have. Even if it's not going well, if the second it starts to decline, then talk about a writing rut. So, I mean, we actually have a studio vlog. We haven't told anybody this yet, but I figure it may be necessary on this topic. We have a 2-episode studio documentary that's going to be released probably in the next week or 2. And it literally is, everything is video documented of writing from scratch.
that is interesting, because I think a lot of people that don't have experience in the studio and they hear about bands recording, they think it's this mystical thing that's very difficult.
Yeah.
First few times are, once you settle in, it's like riding a bike. However, there's different situations. You get in with a producer that doesn't like something that's being played, and wants you to change it on the spot, or, different sorts of things. Like the song that you loved is being ripped apart by an outside writer. These are all things that people, don't get to see. I think something like that would be invaluable for people that want to get a studio experience.
Yeah. I mean, I know, thinking about it, it was, again, I say intentional a lot, but it's literally the theme of like everything we've been doing, and reaching out to, it's kind of like reading your own journal, kind of. So like when we reached out to this videographer before going in, we definitely thought there was a real possibility this could be a failure. And I even thought, you know what, even if it's a failure, we have to document this, and it was, there were times that, like I said, that were, I mean, it really didn't look good, but I think at the end of every day, I know I would drive James home, we would carpool, and we would listen to, the bounce that we would get at the end of every day. And we would both be like, what is going on? How are we even doing this? Because really also, at this point, I've never even played music with James. I've only played with Trey like as a little kid. So we've never even played together. So there are a lot of people that go and write from scratch, but we literally only were in a room together one time before that for about an hour and a half. And the next time was walking into the studio and not even knowing each other, having any sort of chemistry and knowing how we're going to react,
And there is a nice beauty there that you can snatch out of that scenario. I think we did a pretty good job of it. I've heard a saying that if you're trying to trick the devil, it's important that you not give him any prior notice.
So, I love that. So we're gonna do. So we're doing two segments, and so we're gonna end segment one right here. But I'm gonna build on it. James, get some sleep. We'll come back in 2 days. No, I'm just kidding here, bud. We're gonna segment. I'm gonna lead off with you, but thanks a lot for doing this, fellas, and we'll see you in segment 2.
All right, thank you.